the ethanol content and a couple of wine samples. So we're going to prepare a set of standards of known ethanol concentration. We'll use that to calibrate the instrument, and then after you've calibrated the instrument, you can then measure the ethanol content of a couple of different samples. So we purchased a couple of very expensive wines, we spared no expense there. How you measure the ethanol content and see our results compared to the values that are on the label. So note the alcohol content from the label, and you can compare it then to the results that we get. We talked about Raman spectroscopy in class. This is the Raman spectrometer. So it's a very small, portable benchtop device. And so the Raman technique has been greatly miniaturized over the past 30 or 40 years. In fact, when I was in college, if you were doing Raman spectroscopy, you'd have this whole room filled up with electronic equipment, and you'd have laser beams going back and forth across the room. And it was pretty impressive, but it took up a whole lot of space and was very, very expensive. With the advances in microprocessors and miniaturized electronics, we've now been able to shrink everything down into this very small unit. And so the laser source, the diffraction grating, the diode array detector are all located in this little box. The light from the laser beam comes out through a fiber optic cable. It goes over here to our sampling attachment. Our sample goes in one of these small glass disposable vials. So one of the good things about Raman is we don't need to use expensive quartz cuvettes. We can just use a simple glass sample vial, and these are disposable enough that it's a bigger pain in the neck to try to wash them than just to dispose of them. So Raman allows us to use very inexpensive sampling vials. The light then that is scattered from our sample travels back through another fiber optic cable, is dispersed off the diffraction grating, and then measures the different wavelengths of light. And from that then we acquire our Raman spectrum. Everything is controlled in this sort of antiquated looking PC over here. The version of software we have doesn't run on Windows 10, so I got to keep this old XP computer alive, hopefully long enough that we can at least get through today's exercise. When you get ready to run the sample or your standard, just like you do for any spectroscopic measurement, use a Kim light to make sure that there are no fingerprints or no droplets on the outside of the vial. The vial goes into the sample holder. The cap goes over the vial, and then carefully thread the cap down tightly. That's probably the hardest part of the whole exercise, is make sure you don't cross thread the cap and damage the thread. You need to have the cap tightly closed. A couple of reasons. We don't want room light interfering. The other reason is laser light, even in the near infrared. This is a 785 nanometer laser that the instrument uses, so it actually is a near infrared laser, as we talked about in class. Even in the near infrared, lasers are powerful enough that if you look at the laser light, it could damage your eyes. So we need to make sure that this cap is tightly closed so we don't have any of the laser light scattered around the room. We actually have a remote attachment on this that if we wanted to take readings, let's say, right through a glass container, we can actually do that by putting a probe up against the container. In those cases, we have special safety laser goggles that you wear to make sure that you don't get any eye damage from the laser light. But here we're just enclosing the sample inside the sample holder so no light can escape. When you get ready to scan your sample or standard, come over to the computer, click on the icon, not the one closest to the left, but the next one, tell it OK, and that will start the scanning process. So what it's going to do is, first of all, it's going to collect what we call the dark current for 30 seconds. So it's going to measure the response with the laser turned on. So basically what we're doing is just measuring the background noise of the electronic. Then the laser will turn on for 30 seconds. It will collect and average the signal with the laser on for 30 seconds, and then it's going to repeat that process. And so we actually average together two different scans to get our spectrum. The reason we average two different scans is the background noise, the electronic noise, is random. So when we average two scans together, the noise tends to cancel itself out. The signal, where we actually get a response, will be additive. And so the signal will get stronger, the noise will become weaker as we average those two scans together. So it collects the dark current, then turns the laser on. We collect the signal for 30 seconds, then it repeats the process, measures the dark current for another 30 seconds, measures the signal with the laser on for 30 seconds, and then averages those two scans together. And that's what we will see then on the computer monitor display when we get our screen. Okay? So while this is scanning, this is just a sample of pure ethanol that we're scanning. Our AV system is still out in this room, so let's walk next door. We'll take a look at the spectrum.